When you're paying rent, you're literally paying someone else's mortgage down, not your own. You're never going to see that money again.
Real estate, especially as a first-time home buyer, is very emotional, and you can start bidding yourself out of your budget.
This is not your forever home. In most cases, this home is the stepping stone.
We always believe home ownership wins in the long run. Hello, and welcome into episode 14 of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. We'll be talking about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia. I am a local real estate agent here in Montgomery County, Maryland, and also a local investor. And as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host,
Anna Bialik, Northern Virginia realtor and mostly out-of-state investor. Still in Virginia, but far enough away that I considered it its birth state.
Anna's all over the place. And we have a great episode today. We're going to be talking specifically for first-time home buyers, and we're going to be talking about some key terms, some of the steps in the home buying process. And if you stay till the end, we'll talk about a few tips that we give to all our buyers. And this is specifically for people looking to buy their first home, whether it's their to live in home or a first investment property. So, Anna, we'll just begin. What are a few things you wish you knew when you were buying your first home?
I had a parent. My mom was always very pro home ownership, so she helped me buy my first home, but I knew nothing. And looking back at that contract now, I actually found it the other day, and I was like, man, if only, I wish I would have known to be there for the home inspection. I wish I would have known what contingencies actually were and what that all meant. And it turned out to be okay, but I knew nothing. I just knew I was moving into a house next to my mom's.
Oh, geez. Yeah. And is this the home that you're currently still in, or did you end up?
Oh, no, this is my first home, and it's still my home, and it will probably be my forever home. So I got lucky. I didn't know, I guess one of the things I wish I would have known when I first bought the house was to go talk to an agent that knew more than I did, because I had no idea. I didn't know the process. I didn't understand any of it. And I got lucky. And I know most people are not as lucky as I am to end up in a house that turned out really well, is a great asset, and I'm still living in today.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm assuming back then, obviously you weren't in the industry of real estate. Yeah. You were in a different field. So I bought our home last year, and it was still overwhelming coming from the other side. I was an agent for about 4 years before we bought the property. So I knew all the steps, but it's still, when your roles are reversed and you're the buyer, there's a lot of emotions that go into it, and a lot you learn as you go. So that's one of the main reasons we wanted to make this episode, is to kind of set the expectations, let, first-time home buyers know what to expect when going into it. But before we actually go about the steps of home ownership, why do you think it's important for people to look into home ownership to begin with versus renting?
The wealth compared for a homeowner versus a renter is exponentially worlds apart. Someone that owns a home has so much more wealth on the books than someone that's renting, because every month you're paying either a mortgage or a rent. When you're paying rent, you're literally paying someone else's mortgage down, not your own. You're never going to see that money again. If you're paying down your own mortgage, at least you're building equity in the property, which is where the wealth comes in that you can then use for something else. So as a wealth building tool, I think owning real estate is hands down the best move you can make for yourself if you're trying to create wealth or even generational wealth for yourself and your family members.
I think the statistic you mentioned is higher net worth than renters. And I think we spoke about this a few episodes back about, the appreciation of real estate here in this country, the mortgage pay down and things like that. The gap widens, which is what's called equity. And you can use that equity for future investments or retirement and things like that. So there's a ton of benefits to home ownership. Obviously, if you're not in the position to buy a home, if you want to keep moving every year or something like that, it might not be the best bet for you at the time. It's not,
and it can be creative too. I mean, if you move frequently, look at the military, they move every so many years, but they can still do the home ownership thing. And if you learn how to do it creatively, or how to strategically purchase homes, you can still move around. You can still have freedom. and still be a homeowner.
Yeah, it acts as like a piggy bank, really. You're
Uh-huh.
putting money into an asset that is appreciating over time. So yeah, but you hear people, especially first time home buyers, they hear affordability challenges and, why
Mhm.
it's harder to buy a home than it was 30, 40 years ago when our parents were 20, 30 years. And, especially millennials. I'm a millennial. I speak to a lot of people and they see things like that. What is your counter to when people say, hey, it's too hard to buy a home right now?
It's not gonna get any easier.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
love Anna. She shoots
um,
it straight.
like, it's not well, because it's not. So, yes, affordability is tough, but it's not an end all be all. There are ways around it if you really want to find creative ways to get around it. There's people that can help you with it. Like, it's not impossible. It sucks, but it's not impossible. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think have setting the right expectations.
Mhm.
Anytime I'm working with a first time home buyer, a buyer in general, you want to let them know, what do they know about the housing market today? Are they familiar with what it looks like locally here in the DMV? And you set the expectations because sometimes we're going to write a really strong offer and we're still going to lose because there's 15, 20 offers, people going 100K over asking with no contingencies. And it's just a matter of what the housing market is today. But I think that's the important part of working with a good real estate agent that doesn't steer you wrong. Obviously, he'll help you write the strongest offer. You're never going to write an offer that you're not comfortable with. So having a little bit of patience and leaning on your real estate professional to guide you through the process, I think will be very beneficial. And yes,
Yeah.
affordability is a challenge. I think it's only going to be here to stay. Interest rates obviously fluctuate up and down, but the shortage of homes on the market isn't going to go away anytime soon. So that just means prices are going to stay where they are. A
Yeah.
lot of
So,
people are looking to buy.
yeah, 2 and 3%. It's not normal.
No.
Higher income would you say those are like the three things that are
Yeah.
causing the affordability issue?
Those are the top three ones. And, you can follow, mortgage news and housing
Hmm.
wire, things like that to stay up to date. But at the end of the day, you really just you have to try if you're
Hmm.
actually interested in purchasing a property. So before we go into the steps of the home buying process, what are some myths that you've heard that first time home buyers have said or things like that kind of have them hesitating on actually purchasing the first property?
Oh, wow. There's so many myths out there because their uncle told them umpty frets and their uncle's never bought a house before. Just like any other profession, we're helping you buy the biggest asset of your life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think,
off my
I mean,
soapbox.
and so yes, that is a myth that buyer's agents are for free. That is not true.
We are not.
And
And we're not allowed to say it anymore legally because it's part of the suit. If we say it, then you are working for free. And
yeah,
so, any agent worth their salt, if you meet an agent that says they're free, then you probably want to run and go the other way because they clearly don't know how to negotiate even for themselves if that's what they're saying.
once you're writing offers, that's where like disclosures and addendums and things like that's when those. But yeah, people were getting away because he wants to read documents that are that long, but it increases transparency with the agents and with their clients. One other myth that I see, and I'm sure Hannah has heard, is that you need 20% down, like a down payment for a property. In a lot of cases, that's not true. You could buy a home if you are owner occupied for as
Mhm.
little as 3.5% with an FHA loan, or 0% down if you are a VA loan.
Yep.
If you are a veteran, you could put 0% down. So you want to be talking to your lenders, letting them know, hey, I am a first time home buyer. If you're a first time home buyer, meaning you never purchased a property in that state, and let them know, hey, if you want to put little money down, what would that look like? Will it be an FHA or will it be a VA? Will it be a conventional loan with 5% down? So there's pros and cons. You will have a PMI, which is private mortgage insurance, when you put
Mhm.
less than 20% down, but it's not a deal killer. It's still possible. It still gets you in the door. It still helps you build in your net worth as a homeowner.
Correct. Yeah. And there are lots of grants and other programs outside of, we'll probably talk about this in a second, but there may be grants and loan programs that you don't even have to put 3.5% down. It may be something less. And I'm 99% sure with VA loans, even with 0% down, there is no PMI insurance. There's a different payment that you have to make, but that gets rolled into that's a one-time payment, like a funding fee kind of thing. And then the other thing I was going to say, oh, and I know this is for first-time home buyers, and so you made that very clear, but just to for the investor side of it, if it is an investment property that you're not going to live in, that's where it's 20 to 25% down.
Correct.
If you're going to buy like a 4-unit building and live in one of the units, you can get away with a lower interest rate. But if it is a property that's just for rent, then you're talking 20 to 25%.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because you can do, the 2-unit to 4-unit, which is, the duplex, the triplex, the quadplex. Mm-hmm. Those, if you move into one of them, those could be considered owner occupied, because you are moving in and you are qualified for these lower down payment programs. So now we're just going to talk about the key steps and the key terms that involve the home buying process. This may be basic for some, but first-time home buyers need to be aware of what they're getting into. What are all the steps? So I'll just start off with the first one. And anytime you speak to an agent, they'll probably say, "Hey, are you pre-approved?" So what does that mean? They want to make sure that you are speaking with a lender. Unless you have millions of dollars in the bank, you will most likely need to qualify for a loan. We just talked about the FHA, the VAs, the conventional loans. So you will need to speak with them to decide how much down payment will I put down? What kind of loans will I qualify for? What do I feel comfortable with on a monthly payment? And they will guide you on that. And I also want to just throw in a tip there is you want to speak with a local lender, because they know certain areas, HOA fees and things like that, and they will be able to guide you based off of your budget where you need to be really looking.
Yeah, I will say there's also, I don't know that I've seen this with bigger like national banks, but also local lenders. Like aside from what kind of loan do you qualify for, the initial question is, do you even qualify for a loan? And I personally know that I worked with several local lenders that will almost do like credit health checks. Like they'll walk you through. And if you're not quite there where you can get qualified for a loan, there's lots of local lenders who are qualified to be able to look with you through your credit and kind of give you tips on pay this, don't do this now, do this here. And you can come up with a timeline to get pre-approved. So that's the other reason I also encourage small local lenders. They know the local programs, but a lot of them are also willing to help you fix your credit for free, like just as a service.
That's right. So the next step would obviously be speaking to a real estate agent, a local real estate agent. They, like Anna or myself, they'll be able to kind of guide you. And it's important that you speak to a lender first, because they can tell you, hey, this is the budget I'm looking for, $350,000. And I love this area of Montgomery County, Maryland. What can I find for that? So then we can kind of cater it. We can put you on house searches. Sometimes Anna and I get homes before they even come on the market, and we can actually see them, or in some cases, get what's called pocket listings and check them out before. They'll also go through a buyer consultation, just do exactly what we're doing right now, walk you through the steps, walk you through the contracts, answer any questions. And it's important to do that because you want to make sure, one, you're finding a good partner, and two, what you're getting into. If you're just buying a house without knowing any of the steps, you might miss something.
Correct. Yes. Yep. So after you talk to your local lender of choice, talk to an agent. Part of that conversation with the agent would be narrowing down what you're looking for. So then the next step after you talk to your agent would be to start touring properties. I tell my people, I usually send them a list, and then I ask them to pick their top 3. So I think step 3 is touring. You start touring properties and neighborhoods, right?
Yep. And we have a tip that we'll talk about towards the end, specifically to this part of the home buyer. But number 4 is, after you see these properties, you're going to be narrowing it down. And then once you really like a property, you're going to write an offer. And writing an offer, you want to be speaking closely with your real estate professional about how you can put your offer in the best light to the seller. So I know you want to talk about what kind of strategies you can do. We won't go too in depth, but we do when you're writing,
when you're
you
writing an
know, you
offer.
know, yeah.
Yeah. So personally, I have some of this conversation before we ever get to an offer, like when we're going through the contract, just so they understand, because sometimes you are under a time crunch when it comes to offers, especially around here. Sometimes it's like on the market on Thursday, offers are all due by Sunday, and you're like, wow. So, I mean, as far as writing an offer, I mean, the first is price. You can choose to offer at, over, or under asking price, depending on the situation of the market. Actually, before even any of that, I call the listing agent to see if they have any offers, what those offers look like. Some are a little more tight-lipped. Are all the contingencies in place? No. Yes, maybe. Like they'll answer. So this helps the agent then go back to their
One,
client.
one more question that I like to ask is, well, what does the seller need? Maybe they might
Correct.
need a quick close, or maybe they need a longer close while they
Yes.
buy their next home. Maybe they need a rent back. So if your agent is not doing that, make sure you ask them to, because an offer might look good to you, but maybe the seller has other
It's not what they
priorities.
need.
Yep.
Correct. And yeah, I usually ask if they need a rent back of some sort, or if there's something that would actually, the fourth question that I asked that you reminded me, I phrase it to the other agent is, what would make the perfect offer for your client? What would make this the perfect offer for your client? And that usually is a good question to cover anything else I haven't asked. Like they don't need
Highest and
a,
best.
yeah,
That's what
exactly.
they always
They don't
say.
need to stay in the house. They don't need, anything. They want money. They want the most money they can get. And I'm like, okay, cool.
But it never hurts to ask. It
It
never hurts
doesn't.
to ask, because every seller is different. So your agent needs to be on your behalf, putting
Correct.
your offer in the best light.
Yeah.
So the next step is obviously you write offers. And if everything works correctly, you get your offer accepted. Thumbs up. Everybody's
Yep.
happy and now we get the ball rolling. So what are the next steps after you get your offer accepted? I know we're all on high emotions at that point.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So after as a buyer, so usually, you get their contract is signed or ratified. That's what ratified means. And then usually the first step, there's so many. The first step is to set up to submit your EMD, earnest money deposit. The buyer has to a certain window of time that they have to send over this earnest money deposit, which is just a good faith deposit that they put down, that's held by a neutral third party. In Virginia, it's the title company in most cases. And that money's kind of held in an account and gets applied towards the sale at the end, unless things fall through. But the EMD, getting any and all inspections scheduled and set up, making sure that the seller's agent is requesting any HOA or condo documents, because these are all things that you need to review, because between contract ratification and the closing date, of your what we call due diligence period, where you have to sanity check all the things about the house to make sure that this is truly the house you want to buy. Unless by chance it's super competitive and you've waived all of your options to get out of the contract, then that's a little different.
We never recommend that, but people are using that as a strategy to basically win out no matter what. Like they're
Correct.
telling the seller, hey, I'm buying your house regardless of home inspections. There's no appraisal, things like, or whatever. There's no backing out, which is appealing
Correct.
to sellers. And sometimes that could get you over the hoop. So, and you can find another buyer. Now,
Correct.
as your buyer's agent, they're going to be very intact with timelines. So I
Mm-hmm.
think Anna mentioned home inspection. So it's very common for a 7-day home inspection here. If you want to be competitive, you can even shrink it a little bit
Shorten it.
less. So after the EMD gets deposited, after the home inspection, what would you say is, and after HOA docs, if there is HOA docs, does the
What
lender
happens
need?
next? There's so many more steps. So as a buyer, so you're going to have questions from me. You'll have questions from your lender. This is where you need to make sure you have all your, if you didn't already have it in a row, this is where you need to make sure you are listening to everything the lender is telling you they need in a timely fashion. Because if you drag your feet on providing any documentation that the lender needs to finalize your loan, you could forfeit your earnest money deposit, because it's your fault that you didn't get the loan in a timely fashion. So you have to make sure to provide everything the loan officer is asking you for. The title company will ask you for additional information as well, and they'll do a title search. So you want to make sure to answer all these people and get them documents in a timely fashion, so that you do not forfeit your earnest money deposit and potentially lose out on the property.
Exactly. That is a pro tip. Oh, that wasn't in our initial bonus. That's a bonus tip, basically. But it's common because sometimes people are looking to buy furniture or things like that, and they spend 15,000 on a credit card, and unfortunately, they now look that increases their debt, and they don't qualify. So that is a pro tip. We'll talk about more pro tips in a second. But yeah, getting all your documents, the more proactive you are as a buyer, the easier things will get through. But the next step is the appraisal. So you're going to get an appraisal. I know what's an appraisal and why is it important in the home buying process?
So the
Oh, good.
appraisal is something that the bank requests. The buyer doesn't really have anything to do with this directly. This is something the financial institution will request an appraiser to go out to the property to basically take a look, take pictures, and create a report comparing it to other properties that are similar in the area to determine a value. Because a bank is not going to loan you more than what the property is worth. So if you offered $500,000 and the appraiser is like, well, this is only really worth $400,000, you have a little bit of a problem because the bank is not going to put themselves at risk by offering you more money than what they could get if they had to repossess and foreclose the property. So that's essentially what an appraisal is. Before the appraisal even happens, a good agent will have done a comprehensive market analysis beforehand to give you an idea of what properties in the area have sold for, and that's usually what an appraiser will use to come up with their numbers, so you have an idea if your offer price is high, low, right on the money. So it shouldn't be too surprising. And then also sometimes appraisals do come in low because there's been market shifts.
Exactly. Yeah. The lenders want to protect themselves. And this is a 400, 500, $600,000 investment that they're giving in you as well into a property. They want to make sure it's actually worth that. Talking about inspections and appraisals and things like that. Who pays for those?
So with the home inspection, it's the buyer normally pays the home inspection. At least around here, the inspectors that I've worked with, it's usually based on the size of the home, like square footage wise. And I will say on average, a home inspection around here is probably about $500, $500 to $600.
Yeah, I've seen both. I've seen some that they require them to pay that up front and some they pay at closing.
It goes either way. Yeah.
Yeah, those are things as a first-time home buyer that you want to be aware of, that you're gonna have to put down your earnest money deposit, and then the appraisal. If you have to pay that up front, then you want to have funds, and those can run anywhere from 400 to 1,000, kind of similar. So right before closing, settlement date is basically when you sign all your papers. We do what's called a final walkthrough, and that is important. I just made a video about this, but it's very important to know the home is what you saw when you first wrote the offer that will be conveyed in the sale, that they are still there. So this is essentially the last time you're going to see the property before you sign all your docs. I always recommend either the day of or the day right before, just to check it out. Make sure they did if you ask for repairs, hey, the roof was in bad shape. The seller said they were going to replace it. Did they actually replace it? You can go get eyeballs on it. Anna, do you always do a final walkthrough with all your buyers?
Oh, I do, for sure. Like I walk through, I recommend that they're there. And then on the Virginia side, we have a checklist. But on the Virginia side, there is a checklist that you can go through, and it highlights all the key aspects of the house as you're doing the walkthrough. And if there's any discrepancies noted, like if something was supposed to be done and wasn't done, that actually can delay closing, because that is a contractual breach on the seller's side if it's something that they agreed to do. And I will also say there's some things, like you mentioned the roof, but there's lots of cases you can't even get to the final walkthrough without the roof being fixed, because the lender won't approve the loan. If it's a large fix, if there's flaking paint, if there's no smoke detectors, they won't even approve the loan. They won't clear the loan to close until some of those repairs are done and documented, and proof is shown that those have been done. That happens even before the walkthrough.
Called lender required repairs. So if the lender comes in and says that may pop up, but the final walkthrough, you basically want to make sure that the home is what the contract says.
Exactly.
And I like to do that the day before or the day of, an hour before, just to get eyeballs on it and go from there.
And then are you going to mention the other, because before, the other thing that is important for home buyers to know, aside from the final walkthrough that happens right before closing, is they will get their closing disclosure documents from the lender title company that basically outlines that the loan's been cleared to close, and these are all the costs associated with the loan, so that the buyer knows how much money they need to wire or have a certified check to go to closing. They can ask any questions about fees, if there's been any mistakes. Like, I review that document and I have my clients review it, and we sometimes we'll do it together, or I'll answer any questions, because that gives them the full picture of who's paying for what. And
Yeah.
legally, you have 3 days as a buyer. Like, you have to have that 3 days before closing to be able to review it. And you have to acknowledge that you got it before you can actually close.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's all in black and white. It shows what the seller's paying, what they're crediting to the buyers, everything that the buyer is responsible for. How much cash to close do you need? They also talk about prorated property taxes, but you're going to need all that in black and white so you can review it with yourself, your spouse, your agent, to make sure it all checks out before you actually go to the last step, which is settlement, which is closing date. We got, you went through all those steps, you got approved, and I always tell my buyers, make sure you stretch your hands, because you're going to be right into your signature quite a bit. And basically after that, you become the homeowner. It's definitely a fun day.
The party. Then you get the keys to your house.
Yeah,
and you're
take
done.
the pictures.
Yeah.
Pictures, you get the keys, and you become the homeowner. So those are the steps. And we're going to just take a quick break. Oh, why don't we review it real quick for everybody, the steps real quick.
Okay.
So first step, lender. You're going to get pre-approved by a lender. Second, agent. You're going to meet and talk to an agent, go through the buyer consult.
Tour.
The third, tour homes that you spoke to your agent about, that are in the location and in the budget that you're looking at. Fourth one is, once you find a home that you really like, you're going to write an offer. You're going to work with your agent to see what you can do to put your offer in the best light. The fifth step is you get your offer accepted. That's the fun part. The next step is you are going to submit your EMD, your earnest money deposit. That is going to go directly to the title company. The next step is, if you have a home inspection contingency, you're going to get that done, negotiate if you need to. And then if there's HOA docs, condo docs, you're going to review those. You're going to get your appraisal done. And then you're going to review the final ALTA and final walkthrough, and then you'll get to settlement. So those are all the steps. I know it sounds like a lot, but definitely reach out to me or Anna if you have questions about it in the Maryland or Virginia side. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to go into our 6 pro tips for first-time home buyers, and stay tuned. All right.
Yes.
Okay. And we are back. Welcome back. Now we're going to be going into our pro tips, ones that we as agents, as investors, we recommend that before you buy your first home. So the first one is really for preparing to buy a home, and it's getting your savings ready early. I know we talked about down payments. It could be as little as 0%, but you also want to factor in your closing costs. These are the costs for the title insurance, the title fees, the attorney fees, all the fees associated with getting the deal closed. And that can range anywhere from 1% to 3%. So you want to have that in place, but you want to start saving early. The more, liquid cash you have, the better position you'll be to buy. So that is a very important step. You want to have some money in reserves for your down payment, your closing costs, your inspection costs, your appraisal costs, and things like that. How about you, Anna? You have any pro tips?
I'll switch the order around a little since we're talking about prepping. I would say something I tell folks to do, if they haven't already done it, before you talk to your agent, is sit down with your significant other. Unless you're solo, then sit down with yourself and create a wants versus needs list. Like, seriously, sit down and think, if I'm going to buy a house, what do I absolutely need in this house? Do I need a certain number of bedrooms, certain number of bathrooms? Does it need to be one floor because maybe my elderly parent is going to come live with me? Create that list of what you absolutely need in a house. And I would say take it a step further and create a separate column that says, why do I need it? Because some people will be like, I need 3 bedrooms, but that's because the third bedroom is really for an office. Do you need a full bedroom? Maybe you can do it with a den. So those are things that if you come into the conversation with the agent already having that in mind, it makes the process much easier to narrow down the search faster. I'll put it that way. And then have your list of wants, because you have things that you like don't absolutely need, but it would be really nice if you had them. And that's just the extra icing on the cake. And again, try to think of why you need those things. Because if you present that to the agent when you have your discussion, it makes it easier for the agent to provide solutions, because maybe there's things you want or need that you thinking of it one way, but the agent can be like, what about this as an alternate solution? Because we see lots of crazy stuff or lots of
Yeah.
alternate solutions. So I would say create a wants versus needs list and ask yourself why you need and want those things, and have that list ready when you have the discussion with your agent.
Such an important pro tip, because you can go as a buyer, and if you don't have this list already up front, fix down the road. So that's definitely a good pro tip, Anna. The second one I would say, and this is also still prepping. We're still prepping to buy your first home, and this is to check your credit and polish your credit. Your credit score is very important. It's basically what lenders are going to be looking at to see your interest rate. So you want to make sure that you're doing all this up front, because you don't want to get under contract and find out that you have a 540 credit score and your interest rate is way above what you were thinking. So the more proactive you are on that, I say you start prepping months, maybe even years ahead of before you actually buy the property.
Yes, that's a good one. All right, so next one for me, for first-time home buyers, is to set realistic expectations for yourself with this home. Like, this is not likely in most cases. This is not your forever home. In most cases, this home is the stepping stone. I mean, a lot of times when you're a young professional, maybe you're not at the pinnacle of your career making tons of money. A starter home or a condo or a smaller, like, it's not your forever home, whether it's you sell it or maybe you decide, I know I'm going to move in 5 years, so maybe I want this to be a rental property. So then that can also help you shape the narrative of how you look at properties. And you have to have that discussion with your agent too. If you have an idea, if this is not my forever home, this is what I think my timeline is and what I think I want to do with this property in 5 years potentially. That helps steer the conversation of what you're looking for and why you're looking for certain things. So just remember, not your forever home. It is a stepping stone.
Exactly. We could tell our clients that this home is great. If you plan on living here forever, fantastic. But if you decide to buy another home down the road with some of your equity that you built up, here is what the rents look like. Maybe if you house hacked it and split and had a walkout basement, here's what I'm seeing in this market. So understanding that most people are not going to stay in their home forever. Something that I'm actually doing myself with when I'm looking for a home to house hack with my fiance, and I told her, this is a short term thing. My last pro tip is to research first time home buyer programs. This is important because they can help you with grants and things like that for closing costs, and this is really on the loan side. So you want to work with. That's definitely one of the benefits of working with a local lender, because they know all the programs. Here in Montgomery County, if you work for the county as a teacher, firefighter, police officer, things like that, they have grants that they will provide to help you with closing costs. That I mentioned that you want to save up for closing costs. Maybe you can have most of it or all of it paid by these first-time assistant programs. So you want to let the lender know and do your research. Really, you want to be looking on these sites to make sure that you actually qualify for this.
Yeah, I think it depends, and this is where the lender comes in handy, because there are some programs that it's household income driven, like qualifications, and then there's some that's individual driven, and there's been some changes to that, and that's where, like I said, but like you were saying, having a local lender is key because they know about all those. And the other thing that I don't know how to do, but local lenders do, is they can stack some of these grant and specialty programs so that like you can qualify for more than one. Some of them are not exclusive, where if you get this one, you can't get any others. So they can help you put together quite the stack depending on what your qualifications are.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. What about your last tip? What about your last tip, Anna?
Oh, so my last tip, there's so many. So this one tied back to what we were talking about during the due diligence period, during the buyer process, about the inspections. Like, inspections I never recommend waiving the inspection. There's ways around it. Like maybe you do an inspection before the offer, but that's a whole different strategy. But I will say, as a buyer, you should make sure, I tell all my buyers, you have to be at the home inspection when that is taking place for several reasons. One, most home inspectors are pretty patient and will walk people through like what they're finding real time and answer their questions. One of my favorite home inspectors will actually show them like, this is the main water shut off, this is where the gas line comes in, like kind of walk them through what that, like where the main systems are in the house and how to use them, which is awesome. When you walk into a house, you're like, I don't even know where the light switches are. Home inspectors can help you figure that out. I will also say it creates a punch list for you as far as like, okay, there's things that like, because a home inspector's job is to find home inspection reports are scary as shit because they're like 1,000 pages long and it's like the toilet is loose. That is not a deal breaker, but you can create a punch list from that like report and you can kind of like work on those things later and you can cherry pick the things that are most important that maybe you do want to address with the seller. And the home inspector can help you walk through that real time. Like these are the big key items. And it just makes the report a lot less scary when you're there in the moment asking questions.
Yeah, you can conversate with the inspector. You know, some of them, the ones that I work with, are very knowledgeable. They have decades, years of experiences, and they see a whole bunch. Yeah, they can tell you if you saw the property and you, for whatever reason, thought the basement was a little moist or whatever, you can say, "Hey, what are you seeing?" And they, like Anna mentioned, they are a little scary, but their job is to point out everything that's wrong with the property. And if you have that actual document, you can use that as a punch out list down the road. Because if you're buying a property that is already been lived in for quite some time, most likely there's going to be a few things that you are going to need to repair in years to come. Those are, I think you mentioned you also had a bonus tip.
So I would say with I think this goes back towards prepping and setting expectations is stick to your budget. That is like when you talk to the lender and the lender says, this is your budget, this is your monthly payment, really truly look at your finances because it's very tempting to walk into a house and be like, oh, we can push ourselves because most lenders, you can usually get approved for a significantly higher loan than the monthly payments you're comfortable with. So you may qualify for $800,000 for a house, but maybe those monthly payments are a little uncomfortable for you. So don't push the limits because it's very easy to want to do that, but then you end up eating ramen on the floor of the house because you can't afford food or furniture because you've made yourself house poor. So do not do that. Do not stick to your budget. Again, this is just the stepping stone that will lead you to that next level house that you really, truly want. Don't rush it. It just takes time.
And that's why it's important. That's one of the first steps is to find your budget, what you're comfortable with as a monthly payment, especially here, you know, houses are competitive and you're seeing multiple offers. Real estate, especially as a first-time home buyer, is very emotional and you can start bidding yourself out of your budget. So that is a great bonus tip. My last bonus tip, we spoke about it earlier, but if you are under contract, please don't use your credit card to buy a Lambo. Please don't use your credit card to buy furniture before closing. Nothing. Until you sign all your documents, then you can do all that. Don't quit your job.
Don't quit your job.
No major life changes. Too. Yeah. Luckily that none of that has happened to me, but I've heard horror stories. So those are all our pro tips. A quick review: start saving early for down payments, for closing costs. 2, research first-time home buyer assistance programs. 3 will be the check and polish your credit. Those are all mainly before you actually get under contract. And then my bonus tip is the credit cards. Make sure you don't before closing.
Yeah. So make your list of wants versus needs up front so you understand what it is that you're looking for. Keep in mind that this is not your forever home. This is a stepping stone. So keep that in perspective. Make the home inspection because you will learn a ton. It will also kind of squash a lot of your fears for when you get that home inspection report. And my bonus tip was stick with your budget. It is very tempting when you walk into a beautiful home to think, oh, I can stretch just a little bit, but don't do it. If it makes you uncomfortable, seriously, stick to your budget.
Exactly. And that is going to conclude our episode on first-time home buyers. If you have any other tips that you think are beneficial for first-time home buyers, please comment, text us, DM us. We really encourage the feedback. And if you found any value in first-time home buyer episode or any of the other episodes, please share them. We're trying to grow. And if you have any questions about on the Maryland side, my name is Nico Garcia and Garcia Official on all social platforms. Anna is on the Virginia side.
And I just look up Anna Bialik on all social media platforms. And I am the chick with the purple hair. And I am happy to answer any questions on the Northern Virginia side. And Nico and I can answer any investor related questions.
That's right. Even if you're a first time home buyer as an investor, please reach out to us. And we appreciate you tuning in to another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast. We are signing off, and then until the next episode.